Shabbat Shalom. This is a Shabbat. One and say Chag Sameach. Chapter 23 and verse 4, it talks about how these are the feasts of the Lord. They're even holy convocations, which you are to proclaim in their seasons. Well, the problem is English isn't the best word, because when we hear the feasts of the Lord, we think of food. But that's not what it means. It means a divine appointment when God is going to intersect with human history. Wow. They were called convocations. In Hebrew, it's mikra, and it means a meeting, but it also means a dress rehearsal. Just like if you're going to get married, one of the things you do is you have dress rehearsals. All of the feasts were dress rehearsals of what was going to happen prophetically 1,500 years later. This is why they killed the Passover lamb on Nisan 14 at 3 in the afternoon, because 1,500 years later, the Messiah is going to die on Nisan 14 at 3 in the afternoon, the time of the evening sacrifice. So they were all rehearsals. Now, if the Lord, how many believe he's the same yesterday, today, and forever? If he fulfilled all the spring feasts to the day, dying on Passover, buried on unleavened bread, rising on first fruits, with the Feast of Shavuot or Pentecost happening on the Feast of Pentecost, if he fulfilled those to the day, he'll fulfill the fall feast to the day of his second coming. This is why we need to rehearse what is going to be happening, so when it happens, it won't come as a surprise. In Deuteronomy 16, 13 through 15, it says, you shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 whole days after you've gathered in your harvest. And then listen to this. This is one of the toughest commandments of all. And you shall rejoice. Oh, do I have to? And not only you, but so does your son, your daughter, the manservant, maidservant, the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, everyone that's in the land. You have for 7 days to keep a solemn feast. And then it says, therefore, God's going to bless you in everything you do, in the work of your hands. Therefore, you shall surely rejoice. Oh, my goodness. You know why that's tough? For a whole week, God says, no whiny whinies. Can we handle that? That's tough. And then back to Leviticus 23, verse 40 through 44, it talks about how on the first day you have to take the fruit of goodly trees. This is why we have this etrog here. And then it also says you're to take branches of palm trees, boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook. Here you go. All right? And then listen to what it says in Leviticus. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Can you believe it? 2 different places we're commanded to be happy and rejoice. And then it says you're to keep it for 7 days. And then listen to this. It says you shall dwell in booths, or a sukkah, which is like a temporary dwelling place. For 7 days, all who are native born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths. 3 times he said we're to dwell in these temporary dwelling places. And 3 times he says we're to rejoice. The whole purpose of dwelling in a temporary dwelling place is for us to realize this earth is a temporary dwelling place. This body is a temporary dwelling place. Yeah, I'm ready for a new one. So happy Sukkot. The other thing, when it says you shall proclaim, do you realize you responded to a personal invitation for tonight? You may think you chose this on your own. You did not. The Spirit of God invited you to come, and you answered that invitation. I mean, that is huge. This event, while it happens every year, tonight only happens every 7 years. We're going to talk about that. And if you remember in the Gospels, it talks about how there was a wedding feast, and they sent out invitations to those who were invited, and they didn't want to come. So he says, you go out in the highways and byways, and you invite everyone to come, and you guys came. This is huge. And the thing is, we are commanded to rejoice. Here's our sukkah that we just built at our office, and you're all welcome to come. There's the dots. What is Israel commanded to do for 7 days? And the Feast of Tabernacles is also called the Feast of the Nations. They would kill 70 bulls every Sukkot for the 70 nations. So on Yom Kippur, they made atonement for themselves, and then 5 days later, they would make atonement for the nations. And listen to this verse in Deuteronomy. It says, rejoice, O you nations, with his people. That tells you this verse applies to the Feast of Tabernacles. This is the time of year that he says this. And then he says he will avenge the blood of his servants and render vengeance to his adversaries. Well, guess what? In Revelation 6:10, those under the altar cry out with a loud voice saying, when are you going to avenge our blood on those that dwell on the earth? This is the response to the Song of Moses, the very last verse. Now in Zechariah 14, it says that everyone who's left of all the nations that came against Jerusalem, every year have to worship the king and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Why is that? Because on the Feast of Tabernacles is when he was born. Today's Yeshua's birthday. Woohoo, happy birthday. Okay, but it also is the day he sits on his throne. How many of you know that it's a full moon outside? And do you know the Hebrew word for full moon also is the same Hebrew word for throne? That's why the throne goes with Sukkot and why everyone has to keep this feast to honor him as king. And so it says in Zechariah that they have to keep the Feast of Tabernacles 3 times. Isn't that amazing? So here they are. This is one of the tabernacle feasts. Everyone has these lulags and etrogs, and those of you that have them will be after the main worship. We're going to do that. But I have here Tishri 15, happy birthday to Yeshua. Now in Zechariah 14, it says the Mount of Olives is going to split in 2. How many of you have been there? It's amazing. Can you imagine when that happens? Well, get a load of this. In Matthew 17:4, Peter answers and says to Yeshua after the transfiguration, remember when Elijah and Moses are there? And he says, Lord, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and Elijah. Why did he say that? He saw this event happens on Sukkot. That's why they built 3 sukkahs or 3 tabernacles.